Welcome to Conscious Living Collective, transformative journey in consciousness with community of like-minded people. My name is Tomek. I'm a scientist, teacher here on Insight Timer, also a transformation coach. In this live session, we blend the latest in scientific research, the deep wisdom of mindfulness, and the art of fulfilled living. As always, in these sessions, I invite you to have your own direct experience in consciousness with community of like-minded people and hopefully emerge on the other side with a renewed sense of purpose and well-being. Welcome to today's session of Conscious Living Collective. Very good to see you here. And as always, I want to begin by acknowledging the meat of these sessions, which is the collective, that is you. And as always, I will start with my wonderful members of my Patreon program. I'm going to look by icons. Hello, Seth. Hello, Diane. Hello, Austin. Hello, Anne. Hello, V. Very good to see you here. Those of you who are joining on a regular basis, hello, Karen. Hello, Cindy. Hello, Anne, Susie. Oh, Carmela. Wonderful. Good to see you here. And the first timers, Vanessa. Very good to see you here. And for your benefit, and those of you who are joining for the first time, I want to say Conscious Living Collective is about group field experience. We are in consciousness experiencing the session, and we'll see how that affects our well-being in a very practical way. And the topic I bring up every week, I'll try to make it as practical as possible. So Vanessa, we will have a discussion first to set up a stage for the practical part, which is always meditation. That is, in a sense, where we all will have a chance to experience or put into work the knowledge that hopefully I'll be able to deliver or convey to you. I'm as much a teacher as a student, and I want to acknowledge that that could not happen without your presence. So wonderful to see you all here. And today's topic, it's a continuation of something that we started a couple of weeks ago. And I call it elemental balance. And for those of you, Vanessa, if you are here for the first time, let me just say that most of the time I use my intellect to convey a scientific knowledge that will hopefully align with our personal experience and hence bring something of a value to you, as I call my favorite equation, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. And wisdom is transformative in its nature. So this is the intention behind each session, and the scientific knowledge is the main way for my communication with you. But I decided to challenge myself in a sense and bring something that is emerged much earlier than scientific method. And much earlier than scientific method, before the science emerged and scientific method emerged, there was intuitive understanding of the nature of reality. And that intuitive understanding of the nature of reality came from 4 elements. When people develop the senses, sense of sight, sense of hearing, smell, taste, and touch, what the first experience was the experience of 4 elements, right? Fire, water, air, and earth. And without saying the actual words, we still can feel the connection that we develop with the elements and the ecosystem that we are part of. And the reason I hardly ever use concepts of that kind, because I assume incorrectly, that scientific method and science is a much better way to approach reality. But the truth is, first of all, I was mistaken. Second of all, intuitive understanding of science led to all major developments. And without that intuitive connection with awareness or consciousness, no scientific development and discovery would be possible. And hence, I'm correcting myself in a sense and taking upon myself this journey of connecting with the elements and try to figure out what they mean to me. And my job today is to, of the past couple of weeks, was to introduce, actually connect science and the more esoteric ancient understanding of the elements and what they mean to us today. Because I think it is important to understand the meaning behind them. So that's where we start today. Bringing the elements in the context of balance. And always my first question to you is that of the experiential nature. Ask yourself, in this very moment, not in the past and not what's going to happen in the future, do you feel, what is the state, the feeling, the sense of your personal balance in this very moment? Feel free to close your eyes or simply take a deeper breath and see for yourself, where are you coming from? And to help that, once again, I'm going to say 4 words: fire, water, air, and earth. Does any of the words resonate with you in this very moment a bit stronger? Perhaps you can feel a shift. This is where we start. This is very important. The heartfelt sense of what's happening within you right now. In many respects, the understanding, the intellectual understanding of this experience is secondary. Because the world can be, if scientists will eventually find the equation that describes the life that we experience, it will be only a description. But the life, as is, you experience it right now. And it contains many equations, many observations, many descriptions. But those descriptions will never be a substitute to your first-hand experience. So by this session, we simply try to make more sense or go deeper into whatever already happens. I had an inspiration very recently based upon which I created just a 2-minute meditation. 2-minute meditation that's called 1 minute pause, because the actual pause, it takes a minute or even less, but the description of it takes another minute. And my inspiration to that was a simple statement that whether you are an experienced meditator or you're starting today right now, all the mindfulness movement, everything that we talk about here boils down to 2 words: here and now. And in this very moment, the balance that we talk about today, the elemental balance that we talk about today, can only be described in this very moment, fleeting here and now. And that can be accessed through awareness. And that awareness has many facets. Has a facet of your physical senses, has a facet of your intuition, has a facet of your internal senses that we will access during the meditation. But ultimately is always about here and now. So today, I want to bring once again or recognize yet another facet of the experience and the balance that happens as we speak in our body. And that is what happens when your emotions and vital energy finally work together. And this is something that I have been working myself and considered very important part of the work, so to speak, or the work. Because if I look retrospectively throughout much time of my life, I find myself very out of balance. And I found myself out of balance not because of it wasn't my fault. It was because the structure of the society that we created put much more emphasis on one aspect of the life versus the other. And let me ask you, what do you think that emphasis is? What is the emphasis? Maybe make it very practical. What is the emphasis in your life? What is where the most effort that you make goes into? And as you got the answers, hello, Meredith. Good to see you here. Where does your effort go? Where does your effort go? And for me, for most of my life, that was the achieving, the fire principle. My red beard is a representation of the fire in me, I was told. And the fire principle or the fire element, as we understand it, that we can think about people that are representative of the fire elements amongst your friends. Fire represents will, initiation, projection, and generally the outward movement of energy and consciousness that being put in a form. And that's why I'm talking to you. I'm speaking out of the fire element. But immediately as I say that, I recognize if fire is not in balance with, what's the balancing element of fire? Water. That represents receptivity, attraction, depth, and the inward movement that draws experience towards itself. Without that water balance, fire simply burns. And that's why, within that principle, this is the reason I've realized to myself, so many of us, including me, particularly in the past, experienced burnout. Because we were asked, which is such a dominant force in our society, to burn, to achieve, to initiate, to make profit, to pay the bills. Choose the words that resonate with you. And that in itself, it's not the wrong way to do things. It's simply the question remains, was that in balance with water? Was that vital energy that has to be used to achieve, to move, to initiate, to burn, what was balanced with the emotional understanding? Were emotions taken into consideration while making the decisions to move forward, to achieve, to do, to grab? And the answer for me personally, it was not. That's why when you burn brightly, eventually you burn out. And that leaves you empty. You're out of fuel, or you are out of fumes, if you will. So today we consider how to take the right actions and move forward but without burning out. How to balance out the element of fire with element of water. And I'm saying both water and fire can be in imbalance, but our society is predominantly, I always struggle with this word. Our society is mostly focused on the fire element, all the initiation. That's why we don't talk that much about emotions, about depth. Although knowing that you are here, obviously it's an indication that the balance is needed. We are indeed representing the depth, the consistency, the sustainability. We recognize that something was out of balance. And we come here together to sit, to recognize, to experience how the life feels on the personal level when those two elements finally start complementing each other and do not fight each other. And as a man, I can say that for most of my life, I was asked to act incompassionately without consideration to my feelings. Again, the imbalance of fire versus water. And that's the structure of our society that moves forward in order to, what is the saying? I'm going to get the over your dead body, which tells me essentially to achieve without consideration to the emotional damage that we're doing to ourselves and to others. So today we try to understand how that balance operates in our own lives. I want to ask you, and feel free to share your experience or simply think it to yourself. Do you think that the water element and the fire element are in balance in your life? How do you feel? And obviously it changes from moment to moment, but in general, how do you feel? And once again, the fire represents the will, initiation, projection, and the general outward movement. And the water represents receptivity, attraction, depth, and the inward movement of energy and consciousness. And as you gather your responses, let me just look at actually a comment section, what we have here. And bound securely to earth, head in the air and consuming water, as it's very hot here, like fire. Well put on. Included all four elements. Hi, Meredith. Hello, Kate. Thank you for joining. Kurti, thank you. Taking care of her toddlers. Austin replied to my question in a piece, but largely throughout my life, it was work achievement. So there you go. I think, Austin, we spoke about it many times. When things are out of balance, we are being reminded of various live events that, and if we are ready to listen, we are reminded that we need to come back. There's something out of balance. Things are not sustainable. So fantastic, yeah. Austin posted an icon of the scale, right? The balance. Yeah, Vanessa says, and this is the reason I can imagine you are here, right? Coming out of burnout. You've been reminded in a very, and I know that feeling, so I know it's not a pleasant way to be reminded that something is out of balance. But nevertheless, I think life doesn't care about being pleasant. It's more about being effective. And that's being very much tailored to our receptivity. That's my understanding of it. So, okay. So I want to say briefly what I mean by, because today's topic is how to balance emotions and vital energy. So I think it would be important to actually define what I mean by vital energy. It's not simply how you feel on the level of the body, whether you're energized, when you feel tired. It's more about, it's not the metabolic sense. There's mostly about feeling the inner force, they have the sense of direction, something that is, it's a kind of the animating principle. And ask you, easy to figure it out. What it means to you is whether you feel excited about anything. When I like the English word to look forward to something, but not necessarily something specific, but the fact that you are here and now. What's the level of your excitement? And excitement is an interesting word because it both describes the vitality in you, but also in science, it means energy. The excitation means to bring a molecule, a particle from the base state to state of high energy. So ask yourself right now, what is the sense of that vital energy in you? So, and now what it means when we are only fire, when that fire principle is in imbalance. It means that you are burning, but that combustion is undirected. So in our life, this is represented through burning your resources, but without getting any result. So that leads usually, if you experience chronic activation or stress-driven productivity, or you experience this what is very common these days, the adrenaline-based living, that we're moving from one gratification to another. This is vital energy being unbalanced by the state of your emotions. And it goes without saying, if that drives your behavior, and fire drives your behavior, and it's unbalanced by the element of water, you eventually will become stagnant. That leads to depression, to burnout, as Vanessa said. And the water kind of moves in, but it moves in a very unbalanced way. And I already mentioned that before, but the representation of the fire element, and particularly imbalance of it, is our sympathetic nervous system. So the nervous system is the important part, how we understand scientifically what's happening in your body. And we have the sympathetic branch and parasympathetic branch. And sympathetic branch represents the fire element, activation, initiation, fire, fight or flight mode. And parasympathetic branch represents water, cooling down, the receptivity, the rest and digest, your immune system. Does it resonate? These words, does it resonate with the state that you experience right now? So if these are out of balance, we either experience overactivation or we experience depression and lack of energy. So we know now that one doesn't go with the other, particularly long term. Everything has to come together in a way that is, well, I won't say in balance, but there's a compensation. Something that very practical, in a very practical way, we try to be practical during Conscious Living Collective. If you can strive to achieve something, say to work on a project, you want to get somewhere to achieve something, But if that is not balanced by the periods of rest and rejuvenation and contemplation and going inward, spending time in nature, things very quickly go south, go out of balance, and we are no longer able to get where we want to go. So the balance we talk about, emotion, vital energies that are interwoven into everyday interactions and to every single thing that you do in your life. We talk about them to achieve, to live our life more effectively. And I really like this word because I think it represents you still will get where you want to go, but you do it in a much more effective way if your fire is balanced with water. If your sympathetic branch coexists peacefully and in balance with the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system. And in the scientific community, Stephen Porges, who developed polyvagal theory, I think brought so much understanding to the water and fire element, because he talks in his work about specifically the balancing act of one and the other. How a part of we continuously are in the sympathetic mode, the activation, and we are missing the reason why we're experiencing all these depression and burnout. It's because we are not taking into account the restorative power of the parasympathetic nervous system and how important this after the period of hard work and striving and getting where you want to go, getting back into the restorative mode, the introceptive mode. It is not waste of time as being perceived, talking about your emotions. It's not a waste of time. It's an absolutely fundamental part of the process of creativity. That's why there's no creativity without considering your emotional energy. There's no energy, there's no creativity without rest. Rest is not a preparation to the creative process. Restoration and parasympathetic mode is an essential part of the creative mode. And this is where I think our current understanding is misleading. That we think, or in our society, there is this understanding that only when you do, you move the needle. And when you rest, it's just a waste of time. But let me bring you one example, and we will jump into meditation very soon for those of you who are waiting for meditation. Example that sheds the light of the importance of this creative process, and this is the memory. Memory works in this way. If you put, say, a poem that you try to memorize, right? You look at it, you repeat it 100 times, and our understanding is the more time you repeat it, the better you remember it. And you could not be further away from the truth. Because science clearly shows that work part, the doing part, when you memorize something, you look at the words and try to engrave them into the structure of your brain, it's only part of the job. The memorizing, as we understand it, moving the piece of information on the level of your brain, that happens, moving, so to speak, from the short-term storage to the long-term memory, happens during your sleep, happens when you rest. So you see how the creative process has two branches: fire and water. Fire being memorizing, looking at the test, doing the repetition, and water being resting, letting the memory to be solidified. And I remember very vividly from my childhood when our school system is based on memorizing things. So I was once again asked to memorize this poem so I can recite it later. So I was very adamant, and I was repeating it and trying to memorize it and to say it, memorize it by heart, and then to say it. And I couldn't, and I was very critical, self-critical, and I thought I can't memorize it. And eventually I was so tired that I fell asleep. And hold and behold, when I woke up and I said, oh my goodness, I lost time. I tried to repeat the poem, say it from memory. And I did it with no problem. Because the only thing I needed wasn't to repeat it a couple of more times, but I needed to rest, to sleep on it literally. Another interesting word, that you sleep on something. Again, English is not my first language, but it surprises me when those phrases come to me and I finally recognize what they mean. So that's why emotions that guide are not being emotions are being used to fuel the vitality, give the sense and depth to our actions. They are not against the fire and water principle at work in a very practical way. There are so many things I want to talk to you about today, and I think there's no chance I can. And this is maybe great time to stop and meditate, because you see, the fire part, the fire element in me wants to give you more, to convey more knowledge. But there's a part of me that say that it's not the amount of information I convey during the session of Conscious Living Collective, but it's much more important part is how much of it can be beneficial to you. If I said one thing that is understood by each and every one of you, I'll be much more beneficial if me presenting to you 10 different things. So I will give you a chance now maybe to ask a question. So I stop my fire and I allow you to say something or to ask questions. And if there are no questions, we will jump to the meditation part and see how fire and water elements, sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of your nervous system, are working in action in the meditation part. What will be your first-hand experience? Thanks, Joey. I appreciate my fire as well. I always have been. However, I recognize how this fire not always been balanced out by the water element. So I'm bringing both into this session. I'm bringing both to you. If any other questions will come up to the surface, feel free to write them, and you can either send me a message or put it later after meditation. Austin, what advice would you give a friend who is struggling to understand their feelings? You know what, Austin? The first, again, there are two, again, fire and water come simultaneously to my mind right now. And the first wants to intellectualize and cite some scientific paper that will give you direct method of doing that. But you know what water in me tells me? What the intuition and emotional part says. sometimes it's not the giving advice, particularly when it comes to understanding the feelings, but simply holding someone else's hand and making sure that that person knows that is not alone is far more important than some explanation. Because I'm the first one to give explanation. What do you think about that answer? Again, this is not a very intellectual answer. Maybe it's not an answer at all. It's just something that came to me and I share with you. Curti asks, what is the most effective way to counter health anxiety? Very good question. And once again, what I want to say, most of us try to avoid anxiety at all costs. This is the natural response. Simply, I would feel much better off if I didn't feel anxiety. But I released just recently a course called Healing the Anxious Heart that contains the answer to your question, Curti. And suffice to say, anxiety is not something, health anxiety is not something that needs to be avoided. Consider that anxiety that you're experiencing as a messenger. I do not know what that message is, but perhaps if you sit with it long enough, you're able to figure it out. My only advice to you is do not reject it. Do not deny it. Do not say it's unnecessary or invalid, but let it be. And if you're searching for my extensive answer, Healing the Anxious Heart, 5 short lessons on what it may mean to you. T says, same, me too with my adult kids. Not anymore, no advice. So maybe I'm onto something. All right. Meditation time. I will play to you once again Peter Helland and his wonderful Forest Whisper, because nature is always supportive of our process. We simply need to allow it. I will switch to the meditation screen. And meditation is an opportunity to recognize here and now how you are in this very moment. What is happening for you? Do you feel out of balance? Do you have a sense of harmony? The principle of mindfulness teaches us, do not reject or accept anything. Simply look at things the way they are. Because when you look, that's the beginning of the balancing act. Not by acting, not by reacting, but simply allowing. In this meditation, we sit back and we recognize that whatever happens in your life is a transition between one state to another. And the longer we spend allowing, the more we recognize that balance is a quality that is always there once we allow it. See for yourself what element are you connecting with more in this very moment? The fire, the activation, will, outward movement of energy, or water, depth, receptivity, the inward movement of your vital force, reflective. Neither of the elements are good or bad. They simply are a representation of the balance in your body, mind, spirit. There's no better person to recognize it but you, through this very moment, through your own personal experience. In other words, that represent water and fire elements are yin and yang, masculine and feminine. The same principle described by different cultures, different approaches. In science, sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system, they're always there. The only question is, are they in balance? Or perhaps there's something that can be done to bring them closer together, to harmonize, allow them to work together in the spirit of harmony, coherence, health, well-being. And there's no need to know words, descriptions, as long as your heartfelt sense indicates what's happening in you right now. The first-hand experience, here and now. So right now, we'll allow you to consider this and allow yourself to be for the next few minutes, knowing that I am here by your side to support your presence and to bring you back when the time is up. And now it is time to shift with the same quality of awareness. Apply the principles of fire and water towards your physical body, and how your physical senses connect you with the reality around you, the space around you, the chair underneath you, how it supports you, the action of gravity that pulls you down. Feel your hands resting in your lap, your feet on the floor, the shape of your body. Recognize the sensations through the surface of your skin, all the other connection points. Feel the aliveness in your body that is balanced out with the emotional part. Once again, feel the shift towards the center. See that you can set a mark closer to the middle and come back to it every time you feel that something is out of balance. When you feel anxious, when you feel stressed, so right now, let us take one deep breath to save this wonderful work you did. Breathing in through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. And when you're ready, open your eyes and welcome back. Thank you for meditating with me. Thank you for sharing this space, for all your questions and all your comments. With almost 100 of us here gathered in front of the screens, I know we co-created a very special transformative space for all of you individually to experience something that you can carry on into the night, because I think most of you are at the moment in the US closer to the evening. But for those of you like myself who are still in the morning, I wish you a wonderful day. And as a reminder, we gather, for those of you who coming for the first time, we gather every week, the same place, the same time, for more understanding, for more transformation, for more first-hand experience. If you wish to ask me questions, feel free to send me a message on Insight Timer, or simply follow me there and receive notifications about upcoming events. Thank you, Kurti. Thank you, Parvana. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Seth. Glad to see you here. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Sandy. I look forward to seeing you next week. And in the meantime, stay balanced, stay in both water and fire element and keep discovering it for you. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Parvana. Thank you, Vanessa, for joining for the first time. I look forward to seeing you next week.